Lord Hammond, Lord McNicol, delighted to have you here today. I'd like to begin, we've been talking yesterday and today a lot about the last 10 years of FinTech, looking ahead to the next 10 years. So a general question to start off with, really. 10 years in, how do you grow the FinTech sector? Is it more about government needing to get out the way, or is it about more regulation? Lord Hammond.
I mean, it's a mixture, and different things are needed in different places. I think there is a role for government to play. I'm not going to suggest that government simply standing back is going to solve all the problems that FinTech faces. For example, the challenge of finding growth stage capital requires intervention. Personally, I think that can be through the way we manage the pension system and the tax reliefs around pensions, but that's another debate. But it's certainly going to require active intervention. I think, FinTech is going to be an important part of the future of financial services in the UK. And for me, the logic of this is we left the European Union, which, in economic terms, was a pretty cataclysmic decision for the British people to make. And we have financial services as our largest single industry sector. So the question for me is, post-Brexit, how do we sustain this oversized financial services sector that contributes such a significant amount to our economy and to our tax revenues? And the answer has to be technology. Actually, the history of financial services in the UK has been around developing and adopting technologies ahead of other people and being agile in the way that we applied them. And I think what I see over the next few years is a gradual or an accelerated coming together of traditional financial services and the technologies being developed in the FinTech sector, so that London becomes the place where new financial technology is deployed first. London regulators, I would like to think, are the ones with the agility to accommodate that. They've certainly shown it in the past, if not the very recent past. And I think that's where our future lies. Most important thing, since we're in a cross-party group here, the most important thing is to be sure that there is a consensus that financial services is a vitally important part of our economy. It's a very tax-rich part of the economy. And it doesn't matter what political party you represent, what your views on different issues are, we should all see this as a sector which contributes a huge amount to the economy, and we have to make sure it's strengthened in the future, not weakened.
Well, let me come to you on that, Lord McNicol. Do you think that if we have a Labour government in power, it will be good for FinTech?
I think it'll be excellent for FinTech. So
I think he's going to say no.
So I completely agree with everything that Philip's just said, especially about Brexit, but we'll not go there today. So part of it is about regulation and about the regulators making sure that we have the right regulation. And Philip's right, the FCA 3, 4, 5 years ago were really smart in what they were doing with opening up the sandbox in around crypto and digital assets. That then seemed to sort of fall away, and I think they lost their nerve, possibly because of where government were with it. So government is really important in terms of setting the language and the framework. And to the main point, I think you've got Tulip Sadiq this afternoon, so you'll have an opportunity to hear Tulip, a key member of Rachel Reeves's team. You look at Rachel's background, Bank of England, and I think the priorities that you will hear are about stability and about growth. And FinTech can play, there's a real opportunity for FinTech within that. The bit that I was really interested in the last speaker in Sriram, was about scale up. Because outside of Parliament, I've been involved with a FinTech business. We struggled to scale that business with finances from within the UK. And there's a lot needs to be done around the traditional financial sector to support and drive the FinTech sector. Now, I think government can set some of the language around that, and that sits around long-term rather than short-termism, and it sits around a regulator being able to be light touch, but to protect consumers with that. So I think we're pretty much in the same place on what needs to happen.
Yeah, and I'd like to come back to that, but just going back to Labour, do you think Labour would do anything differently when it comes to FinTech?
So in the financial growth a document that Rachel and the Treasury team produced, Ron Khalifa was part of that. There are a number of serious players both in the traditional finance and in the FinTech side. There's actually talk about tokenization and how we need to move forward with that. There's talk about regulation and how it needs to be the right regulation. So yes, I think there'll be, it's not going to, the FinTech sector needs to drive itself, and we see that, you know, whether it's through blockchain, whether it's through innovation, whether it's through things like open banking and the work that's been done there. Open finance will be a key part. How we take it to the next stage and take open banking and open up across not just you know, your main accounts, but across savings, across pensions, across the wider financial services. So yes, I think there will be opportunities there.
Lord Hammond?
Well, I think there are two things that an incoming government, let's be neutral about what flavour it might be, that an incoming government probably needs to do. The FinTech sector and the early stage tech sector generally needs better access to capital. Yeah. And you know, we can talk about getting investors to think long term, but behind investors are savers, ordinary people's money in their pension funds and whatever. We've got to persuade them as well that it's in their interest to think long term, not just, you know, play the FTSE 100 or the Dow Jones more likely, but that they should be thinking about investing in Britain's future as part of their own planning of their own future. And I think the second thing, candidly, that's hit the FinTech sector is, you know, across FinTech in London, in the UK, we've got a lot of people who are not from here, from other parts of the world. And FinTech has thrived on easy access, easy come, easy go, and being able to draw down talent and resources from around the world very quickly and without bureaucracy. Many FinTech businesses are relatively small. They can't deal with the bureaucracy of a complex immigration system. And I think we need to rethink the post-Brexit settlement in terms of, you know, my challenge is this. If I'm running, my challenge to any government is this. If I'm running a small, growing, successful FinTech business in London, and on a Thursday afternoon, I realize that I need someone with a specific talent, and I need them on Monday morning, and I know that I can, you know, I know where they are in Vilnius or Tallinn, and I need to be able to get on the phone, get them on a plane on Sunday, and they're working for me here on Monday morning. Now, we used to be able to do that. We can't do it now. And we need to fix that somehow. That's very important, not just for FinTech, but for all high-tech growth businesses.
Doesn't that therefore sort of limit the growth potential of FinTech if we aren't able to get that talent into the UK?
It will. I mean, I think it will limit growth. If people aren't able to access capital, or if people aren't able to access talent, that will limit their growth. I mean, that's stating the blindingly obvious. In a business like FinTech, it's about capital and it's about talent.
So do you think, go ahead, Lauren.
No, so there is a lot of talent, and actually we heard it in the last session, there is a lot of talent inside the UK. You look at the Golden Triangle. Coinbase did a blockchain event in Manchester, bringing in 100 small blockchain startups to get together just to tell their stories, and then looking to work with the Mayor's office and with some of the local MPs on that. So Philip's right, Brexit has caused caused an issue. Actually, we've got a vote in Parliament this afternoon on the Rwanda bill, and my worry about that is that it's a wedge issue as we run into the election. The bits that sit underneath it are actually businesses, your companies, being able to attract the talent and to grow. Now, one of the things that I hope, if we do get an opportunity for a Labour government, is that some of those relationships, especially with Europe, will be lifted out of an argumentative state and put into a position where we can actually do business. So, the Brexit vote happened, that is settled. Labour have been very clear on where they are with that. But I do think there's an opportunity to build the relationships, especially around alignment, and to make sure that that stays as tight as possible. Although there is a flip, which was meant to be the Brexit dividend, which is if you move away from alignment, you can then open up further future trade agreements, and you can set your own rules that set around that. But there is a balance that sits with that.
I just want to add something because I'm getting tired of all this consensus. There is one black cloud on the horizon, and I'd be interested.
Liz Truss.
No. there is one black cloud, and that is flexibility in labour markets. Yeah. People running small dynamic businesses need to be able to hire people. They need to be able to fire people, bluntly. Yeah. And anything that took us towards, day one, full rights, you hire someone on a Monday, and as of Tuesday, it's a nightmare to try and get rid of them. Anything that moves us closer to the French style of labour market is going to be very, very damaging for small, dynamic, high-growth businesses. And I hope whatever the Labour Party has in mind around this, and of course it is an agenda that's there, whatever is done has to be done sensibly and sensitively. So it can't be day one. There's scope for reform without going to day one, and it must exclude the smallest businesses. I think it would drop on small dynamic businesses like a dead weight if they were suddenly told that the full range of employment protections applied from day one. So if you can reassure us on that.
So the bill has, not the bill, so the proposals have been published. So the proposals are out there for people to see. There will be consultation that sits around it. There are a number of employment rights issues that we do need to work through, and it's usually where there's abuses of that, whether that's in how people are treated, the terms and conditions that they have. With regards to the day one rights, I'm not across the full detail on it, but my understanding is that there will always be a probation period that sits within any workplace or any new employer. So again, it's worth having a look at the detail of the proposals that sit with that.
Let me pick up on the point that you made, Lord McNicol, about we're good in the UK at startups, but not so good at scale-ups. Why is that? What are the main factors there?
I think part of it's risk. There was debate in the House of Lords quite recently, and a number of politicians from across the political spectrum were very nervous about telling financial institutions where they should spend their money and how they should spend their money. So, John, is that better? Okay, that's a bit better. So there was a bit of a discussion about that, and many politicians were nervous about instructing or telling financial institutions, be that pension funds, be that investors, be that VC, where they should put their money. And I do think that we just need to get better at managing risk. When we scaled the business, the FinTech, in the UK, we had to go to the United States VCs for the money to do that. We couldn't get access, whether it was through the banks, whether it was through the pension funds, or whether it was through the markets within the UK. So I think part of it was risk. I think the big issue for us was that we were looking to fund debt, so there was no equity. And actually, for many of you, you'll have had to make really difficult decisions about how much equity you're releasing within your business. If we can get better at driving growth and scale-ups without having to release large amounts of equity within our businesses, then I think you're giving the business owners and those who are running those businesses the opportunity to go further and to do more. And I don't know, I genuinely don't know the reason why we're not good at releasing more money for debt, and there's such a big push to take equity in small startup and fintech businesses.
What do you think, Lord Hammond? Is it
Well,
tough
I think it is. I think it's about capital, and it's about exit prospects. Once people have got past the startup stage and they're into revenues and perhaps approaching profitability, and they're thinking about raising capital for growth, they're also starting to think about what their exit options are. And it's just a simple fact that at the moment, exit multiples are much more attractive in the US than they are here, and we have to address that. I think that we have an education job around persuading people about what is in their long-term interests in terms of saving. The profile of pension savers in the UK has changed because of auto-enrolment. They're typically younger on average than they were, and riskier assets are more appropriate for them. Evidence from around the world, Sweden, Australia, is that pension funds investing in less liquid, more risky assets can actually deliver very high returns for savers. So I don't think this is asking people to sacrifice their returns, but we have created an environment inadvertently, and for, it's typically British thing, in trying to protect people, we've created a very risk-averse environment among pension trustees. We've got lots of very small pension funds in the UK with amateur trustees who are terrified about their fiduciary responsibilities. I think that's where we've got to start doing some change. Jeremy Hunt's already announced measures to encourage consolidation of pension funds. We need fewer, bigger pension funds with professional trustees and a statutory framework that encourages or allows them to take certain defined risks, safe harbors, for example, for investing a certain percentage of their funds in illiquid assets. But I think, candidly, and this is a view that not all of my colleagues in the Conservative Party would share, but I think we have to ask the question about how we give tax relief on pension savings and pension fund earnings. It's fine to give tax relief, but we should ask people to do something in exchange for that tax relief that they might not otherwise have done. If people are just going to invest their money in US stocks, which they would have done anyway, whether they had tax relief or not, how can you justify £60 billion of taxpayers' money to support that? I think we have to ask pension funds based in the UK who get very generous tax relief to invest a proportion of their assets in UK businesses and UK listed equities. And I think that's going to be necessary to halt the slide in relevance of the London Stock Exchange, which in turn is a factor that is causing growth stage businesses to think about where they want to be in order to position themselves for an exit. So I think it's a whole ecosystem problem. It's not just about growth stage. It's about IPO. It's about liquidity in the stock market. It's about how we organize and manage our pension funds, a whole system approach.
And do you think the Mansion House Accords, which were somewhat aimed at addressing this, have had much impact?
Well, I think it's a good start. It's a very good start. And to get the insurers, the pension funds to focus on this is exactly what's needed. But I think we need to go further. I think the figure is this. On the eve of the global financial crisis, over 25% of UK pension fund assets were invested in UK listed equities. That figure now is, I think, somewhere around about 6%. And we need to get it gradually, not overnight, but gradually back to the sort of figure that we saw, whatever it is now, 15, 16 years ago.
Final thought, how are you feeling about 2024 for the FinTech sector and beyond? Optimistic? Do a lot of things need to change? What are your thoughts, Lord McNicol?
So yeah, so optimistic. I think I'm the eternal optimist, having run 2 general elections for the Labour Party and lost them both. So a little bit more optimistic for the future. I think there is a great opportunity for the UK to lead the way on FinTech across the globe, but we need to seize it. And it isn't a party political issue. Yes, there's issues about stability, there's issues about growth, there's issues about capital and financing. But we've still got one of the best university sectors in the world. The talent that is there, you know, you look at events like this, the talent that's in the room, the businesses that have been created. So yeah, I'm hugely optimistic about it. And we as a country, and Philip touched on this, but post-Brexit, post-COVID, post the financial crisis, we need to find our place in the world. And actually innovation, FinTech and new technologies can be the beating heart of that. There's lots to do around CBDC, there's lots to do around digital assets, about tokenization. We're only scratching the surface on it, but if we don't invest in it, and actually there are some great organisations out there, whether it's the British Business Bank, whether it's some of the other financial institutions that have been set up to invest in new businesses. There is opportunity there. It's just about supporting it and creating the right government, treasury and regulatory framework around it.
Thank you. Lord Hammond?
Yeah, well, I'm optimistic too about the UK's prospects in FinTech and other tech sectors. I think we've got a great tech sector in the UK. We have a fantastic university sector, second only to the US in the world. We've got great research institutes here. We've got a legal system, which is the world's favorite legal system for commercial transactions. We've got a language, which last time I checked, nearly everybody speaks, which is a great help. We've got a good time zone. We've got a lot of things going for us in the UK. We've got great talent, and we have got a very entrepreneurial people. I mean, the British people are incredibly entrepreneurial. Don't always succeed, but they're always willing to have a go. If you look at number of business startups in the UK per 1,000 population, it's pretty much right up there with the US and leading everybody else. We have got to recover what I think was a great reputation that we had for regulatory agility. And I think that's where we probably need to do some work. In defense of the regulators, I think the whole Brexit process placed an enormous burden on them, all the temporary permissions both ways that they had to manage. I think, you know, for 2 or 3 years they were simply overwhelmed by the immediacy and enormity of that challenge. But we do need to get back to being the most, whether it's regulation of financial services or regulation of sort of complex legal, ethical issues. You know, we were the first country in the world to regulate human fertility and embryology, for example, a very, very sensitive legal, ethical area. Now we're going to have another one in AI, how we regulate the legal issues around AI. I think Britain could lead on that as well. And we absolutely need to identify where we have comparative advantage, and we need to aggressively pursue those comparative advantages, because our competitors are looking for their comparative advantages and our weakness. And especially if those competitors speak French, they're trying to ruthlessly exploit them. And we have to be prepared to be just as ruthless, fighting back and exploiting our advantages, like the English language, legal system, our university sector, and our geographic location.
And there we should leave it. Such a pleasure to talk to you both. Thank you very much. Lord McNicol and Lord Hammond. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Take care.